As said, I will speak today about a robotic process automation. So basically, not those kind of robots that can that you can imagine. This is basically done through the software. First, a few words about me, so you will better understand why I'm here and what I'm doing. So first of all, I'm a tester. So for 10 years, I used to test the software, web application, mobile application in a different company. So in a pharmaceutical, data warehouses, automotive. So I did pretty a lot of projects and then worked as well as a test manager. So I used to estimate the work, the risk, assign tasks to the testers, and as well I was testing with my team. I'm as well as a mentor, I can say. Outside the testing, I cooperate in a Code Dojo initiative. So it's a foundation, and we teach children how to code, how to program, how to behave with the technology. A quite nice experience when we need to explain everything to the children that are age of 7, 8. I'm right now a leader, so I'm a team leader working somehow like a test manager and team leader together. I'm coordinating the team, motivating. I'm responsible for the whole line manager staff, but as well as also for the overall quality of the software that we are testing. And at the end, I'm a mother, so basically it's a second role. So after work, my children are testing my patients. So basically, it's also leading home and leading at work. And a few words about my company. So we are doing a back office processes for a bank, for the second biggest bank in Germany, Commerzbank. So we do a lot of manual processes for a back office. It's account creation, document management, loans, etc., starting from very, very simple processes till the complicated ones connected with payments and a huge amount of money that we are processing. But it's not only that. Here is a test center, so it's my responsibility to test the application delivered by our clients, mostly connected with the financials and bank operations. And here is a part that is responsible basically for robotic process automation. So running robots on a software in order to automate the business processes and make it less costly, I would say. So what is all about? Robotic process automation, basically it's a platform, it's a framework that in an agile and cost-effective way automates manual, what is very important, rule-based processes for back office administrative tasks. And by that we are reducing costs and we are improving accuracy of the data created in the output systems by creating so-called digital workforce. So right now the job is not done by the human, it's a robot that is clicking through the application and doing all the manual work for us. It's also increasing the auditability and control that we have through the manual process that is done, and basically it's producing less errors when the process is done by a robot. In a simple words, robotic process automation is the configuration of the automated framework through the interface. So it's basically not a programming, it's just configuring the interface. I will show the example later. We call it, we create a virtual workforce. So to emulate the process that normally is done by the human. And the robot basically is mimicking the action that is done by the person itself. What is also said here is that it is no complex integration is required. So basically, it's really maybe not really simple. We need to ask the developers, but it's simpler than just programming. The framework that we use, Blue Prism, is very easy to be configured. How it works, first we need to analyze the process. So we need to sit and speak with the business and analyze all the processes done by them. It's also based on the documentation that they have. So for example, standard operating procedures. They need to have such in order to provide for the new employees that will have to do the manual process. And then we analyze it and we design the solution that will be done by a robot. Then, of course, we implement it, so we configure in the framework, then we test it. About the testing, I will tell something later. And then we need to maintain and run. Basically, the environment is changing constantly, so the application on which the robots is working is changing, so the maintenance, the control, looking how the robot is running is a very important task. We automate the processes in 4 steps. First of all, it's the documentation. So we create a very, very detailed documentation that is providing every single click that needs to be done in an application in order it to be correctly configured. So first of all, the business analyst needs to write, it's normally a very huge document containing charts and drawings that is showing the whole process with all the paths and exceptions that may be encountered during the process. Then developers sit and configure the process. And a very important step is the education of the people that will be controlling the robots. So there are people, currently the robots are not working all day long, so they are working from 6, I suppose, till 6, because they need to be controlled. Someone needs to sit and start the machine and start the robot, and then we monitor how it is working and what exceptions are thrown, whether the environment is running. That way we need to correctly educate the people that will be monitoring the robots, how they should behave when they come up to an exceptions or something unexpected will happen. And at the end, we monitor the performance. So it's very important to make a robot run faster and faster. So at the beginning of the analysis, we just make a decision to drive an automation, to do the automation when we know that the process will be done quicker than the human can do. However, it's a constant process of improving the performance and optimization. When we want to automate something, we need to ask ourselves some questions, because there is, it's not possible to automate every process. The process, first of all, needs to be logical and rule-based. So it needs to be black or white. We need to tell the robot to go left or to go right. It's not a decision-making thing. Just, for example, need to ask a question whether there is a middle thinking inside the process required, whether a human needs to make a decision while performing the process. If yes, it's not a good candidate for automation. If the process is repetitive and without many exceptions. So, of course, if we will have a lot of exceptions inside the process where we need to do something manually and take the decisions, of course, it won't be a good candidate. Processes with low to middle complexity. So again, we need to analyze and document all the steps performed in the process. That is why it's very important that the processes are not too complex, at least not for the tools that we use right now. Maybe in the future we will be able as well to automate very complex processes. And the last one, so processes with high volumes. So we need to ask questions, how many times the process is done during a day, during a month. So if it is hundreds, thousands of times, it's a very good candidate for automation. We also have so-called blockers that will lead us to difficulties or limited possibility of automation. So it's a paper-based document. So if anything is handwritten, if we make notes during the process, it's not a good candidate. As well, when inside a business process, a phone call needs to be made or we need to speak with somebody as well. It won't be able to be done through a RPA tool. When we need to when we need to make a conclusion, when we need to make decisions based on our experience, so we need to have the experienced staff on board in order to perform the process. Robot will also not be able to answer to our questions. That's why, as I said, it's black or white, no experience-based decisions. When the research or quality-based assessment needs to be made, and interaction with third parties, with insurance companies, with any middle decisions are our RPA blockers. The data that we are providing for a robot needs to be a digital data. It can be a scanned copy of a machine written document, because this is the information that we can easily read. If it is handwritten, it's not so easy, and that way we want automated. So first of all, digital data, emails, can be Excel files, data banks, databases, Word documents, every digital data. Those needs to be structured data. Structures means without free text fields. So it can be numbers, date inputs, checkboxes, somehow fixed categories. Cannot be a free text field, so a robot needs to analyze and find the proper data. This example I will show later. And at the end, it's a very important step. It's the initial quality of data that is provided for a robot. So we do a validation in order to exclude all the data that might provide problems during the automation process. Of course, automation is good. I think everyone can say this as it's a higher quality, so it's we produce less errors that are done by a human, so they are eliminated, so we improve the satisfaction of our client to whom we deliver the process. It's productivity, so a robot, of course, can operate 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. It's a cost saver. At first, we need to put a lot of effort and a lot of money into the automation itself, but then it will provide us cost savings. And this is the information that is analyzed at the beginning when we start analyzing the process if we want to automate it. And the implementation speed, it does not mean that the implementation speed is so quick, but when we need to extend the automation or we need to automate another process that is very similar, the speed is quicker. We can reuse some part of the configuration of a robot. Example, candidate process. It is a process that was actually automated. It's showing a very simple picture. So it's a process of providing, a manual process looks like this. We had an Excel file with 12 columns, for example, 100 rows. With the information about the client, about the account number, and about the amount of the money that needs to be accounted booked on the account. And what we did, there was a team that was just copying the information from the Excel files and pasting it into the output system. So it's a very good candidate for the automation. One pain point here was this part, workflow. It was the unstructured fixed text field. So we had two sources of the data. It was not only the Excel, it was also an external application. And the clients were providing the information in a fixed text field and providing this information not standardized. So it was not structured. But let's speak about the process itself. So it's the robot simply takes the first item from the Excel file or from the analyzed information from the fixed text field and then perform a pre-verification. So it might happen that the account number, for example, it's not the real account. It's containing not enough digits. So those kinds of data will be excluded to the manual verification and marked as an exception. If everything is okay during the pre-verification, the system inserts the data into the system by clicking in a system. If okay, mark completed. Something, of course, might happen during the data input. So again, we mark as an exception, and those records will be done manually. About this fixed text field. So for example, this is the information how the data was provided by the clients. And we can see that, for example, the account number was provided in a different format. So the clients did, it looks structured, but basically we can find the information that can be hard to read by a robot. By the software, and basically we are not sure what the client will do. That way, our developers found a solution where they just prepared macro. It's an Excel macro that allows the users that are providing the data for our process to insert into the structure fields, and then when we copy the data and paste it into the system, it's structured and can be read by a robot. So we have the robot can take it as a start of the information and add it as well the information, so it can read that it's the end, and then we have the structured data for every single field like in an Excel file. Robot configuration looks like this. It's only a small part, so the process looks very simple, but the configuration might be complicated because of the lots of paths and exceptions and things that may happen in the middle. So actual work is here. First step, we validate the data. If it passed, then we fill in the information. And of course, in the meantime, we can create some kind of warnings that are at the end analyzed by the controllers that are controlling the work of a robot. It's marked red because I wanted to show you that it's not the end. Then the step is additionally configured, and we have a start of step 4. We have the input data. Input data are the data that comes from Excel file and will be inputted into the output application. So again, the system is just clicking through the application and providing the data. So it's some kind of GUI automation. And again, this step, it's clicking on the type of the account that we need to, type of the accounting that we need to make. And if we look further deeper, the input to this step is type of the accounting, and then we might add the new, so add in plus the money, we can add in minus money, and then we can make a storno, so cancel the operation. Those three kinds of operations, and it's basically showing that, so this is only the path to click the proper radio button. So a configuration seems to be complicated. What is the aim of testing the robotic process automation? Is to basically investigate, confirm that the execution of the business process, the one that we analyzed, done by a robot, is correctly implemented. So we are not testing the output application in which we put the data. We are not testing how they are working. We are testing the process that is automated. So for me, at the beginning, it looked very simple. So I thought it's just to verify that the input data that we provided is matching the what was inputted into the system. But it seems to be a lot of work, and our main focus was just to test process is correctly automated, not the data is correctly inserted. It seems to be different. So I wanted to show you how our process looks like, and basically everyone in the process is responsible for the quality of the solution that we provide. We do not have a tester itself. We have a test manager, quality assurance specialist that is taking care of the whole quality of the delivered solution, and basically checking whether the programmers, developers, do their work correctly. We know that programmers does not like to create defects, but they do. Right now they do create defects for their own configuration. We start with the creation of requirements, so process definition document, solution definition document. We create test cases. It's done by the business analyst who knows the process very well. The creation of test cases is basically connected with creation of test data. So we are defining what test data we need to include in our process. We need to process through the robot in order to receive every single path that the robot will go through. It's also done with cooperation with the end users. Then also a business analyst is responsible for creation a test plan. So it seems strange. However, the idea of testing the automation is the same for every process. It's just the process itself is changing. Developer configures the robot, and the test manager, the tester, the specialist is ordering the data In a bank, it's a very complicated task to order data. It's not so simple because banks had a lot of systems. So I'm not saying only about the test environments and development environments, but they use, for example, free systems to keep the data of the client. So it's some kind of redundancy of the data. And you need to do it correctly in order to have a proper bank clients that will be processed through the system. A test manager also participate in the review of test plan, but the actual execution is done. It's here written tester, but it's just the role, and the role is done by the independent developer. So the developer that did not automate this process themselves. Just the developer that knows the process but was not involved in the configuration. And the automation is the testing is basically running a robot, checking how it is performing, and at the end verifying the output data. So the developer is responsible for creating and retesting, closing the defects. The process developer, the one that configures it, needs to resolve, analyze. And the idea behind the test management is to make sure that the developers are doing a proper work in a test management tool. So for the defect monitoring and test cases, we use currently HPQC. But it's not, the developers are not disciplined to correctly perform the job required. That's why we need a person that will monitor whether it's according to our rules, it's reported correctly, and at the end we can say whether what is the quality of the delivered automation. And at the end, of course, we create the appropriate user acceptance documentation. What are the types of tests we do? First of all, those are the technical acceptance tests. The tests that are done prior the robots start system testing, let's say. So we test the architecture, we test the accesses, that the accesses are granted, that the environment is up and running. So we do the testing on testing and on the development and environment, and at the end on the production. So it's making sure that everyone, that the robot basically, so the users that is used by the robot can perform the testing without any problems. Then we have a business acceptance test, and it's testing based on the process documentation. So we take the documentation and we check whether the robot is performing according to is fulfilling the business requirements. It's done by taking the set of test data, copying it, so the robot takes the data, is processing the automation, and at the end providing a report, and we can check by observing what the robot is doing and by checking the final report whether everything was done according to our business requirements. And the user acceptance testing, mostly done on production environment, so on the selected set of data. Everyone sits together, so the end user, the process owner, the developer, and they are again running a robot, but on a production environment. It's very often happens that the last issues are discovered on a production environment because we use the production data, so new problems appears. And constant performance tests. So this is the process that is basically done during all the phases. So we monitor the performance and we try to optimize it. The last thing I wanted to add here is the test data. I already spoke about it. So it's a complicated process. Ordering test data is based on the provided forms. We need to, in order to run the automation on the data for the clients, we need to first of all create a new bank client. Then we need to have the proper setup for them, so whether it has access to online banking or other privileges. Then we need to create a product. And it's not always taking 1 day to create such data. Sometimes it needs to be processed through the system. So it's a process that may be done through the 10 business days. So ordering test data is a process that, so we need to do it in advance prior the testing starts. Our test objects connected with what we are testing is the test environments and access rights, and as well process configuration based on the document process definition document. The roles that I already described, and it's not only those roles inside the process, and all the people that are responsible for the quality are as well a team leader, as well a process manager, and as well a business users that provides data for our automation. So I won't focus in a very detail into their roles. I already spoke about it. Business analyst, so the whole business analyst, and creating proper documentation in order to document every click in the application and a procedure how to operate for a robot. Process developer is responsible for the configuration, technical acceptance test, as well supporting during the system and user acceptance testing, and exception analysis. Then a tester, so I said independent tester is for us a developer that did not perform robot configuration, and she has proper knowledge in order how to run the robot and accesses to our environments, can easily execute the test scenarios based on the provided test data, document results in HPQC, and proper defect reporting and closure. And the test manager responsible for the master and delta test plan, creating a test schedule, monitoring the activities done by the developers, defect management, monitoring and training the users about the whole quality assurance subject, test data ordering, and participate in the reviewing of the final user acceptance report. So our approach was as good as possible, but as minimal as required. The main thing here is that we do not test the end application, and we do not test the robot. We do not test the application on which the robots perform their job. We do not test as well the I'm sorry. We do not test the process that is provided by the business. So how we are making sure that we understood the process very good, and we are not testing the process itself. It's the testing of the automated solution. Test run, I said it before, it's actually the execution of a robot. And independent tester in our case is a developer. So we wanted to have an independent view of the quality of the software, but it was hard to train the testers and grant them access to Blue Prism tool and to all the testing environments. That way we have it all together. So the developer is responsible for the quality, but it's independent because it did not participate in the configuration. And basically, what is most important for me is that everyone in the team is responsible for the overall quality of the automated process. So that will be it. I hope I'm not too late or too early.
Unfortunately for you, we still have time for questions.
There is a question, how to work with programmers in order to assure high quality of development and reporting, and how you will verify that process is well defined and correctly implemented in your organization.
How to assure the work with programmers, developers, yes, that it's going smooth. So it's basically, as I said, the training. So first of all, we provide for the programmers that are inside the process the overall quality assurance view. So we want them to be to understand that they are also responsible for the quality of the automation. As I said, we do not have a tester itself, so it's only the matter of making them aware that they are as well responsible. What was the second one? It was also from my description, yes?
And how to verify and measure if it works or not?
It's based on the test data. So basically, we create the test data that will verify every single path in the automated process. So based on the business process, the business analyst prepares the set of test data. So the set of clients configured with their accounts, and we can say the amount of money on their accounts, the type of products that they have. It's done with cooperation with the business, so we are assuring the process is tested based on the test data that we provide for the robot. Of course, at the end, we cannot be sure that everything was tested, but because we prepare it with a business, so with the users that actually operates on the system, and we receive the data as well from them, we at least know that we cover the most critical scenarios. The biggest challenge for me was to understand that I do not have to, so my first thought was that I will take the huge set of test data, then provide the expected results. Okay, for this client, this product, I need to have this data in the system, and then I will manually sit and check every single data entry. So my biggest challenge was just to understand that it's not possible, and we need to find another way. And we need to focus on the automation itself, not testing whether the application behaves correctly and whether the business process is correctly defined. We just check whether the robot, the automation inside the framework is performing exactly what was set in the process definition document. If the process is wrong, it's also wrongly operated on the production. So it's currently done by humans. So if it is wrong, I think it would have been caught earlier on a production. No more questions.
No, we still have time for.
Okay.
Make it.
Based on your experience with testing of RPA solutions, do you see anything which is typical for it, which is different from the regular testing? Maybe some clues or some golden mines how to test RPA in overall?
So it's a huge, I see a huge difference because basically we are not testing here. We are just making sure that the process is correctly configured. So it's not how I used to test. So I used to test manually. I have the requirements and I get into the system and check whether the system behaves correctly. And here we are just observing what the robot configuration is doing and based on the test data, checking whether it performed the correct actions. Basically, it's not the testing I know.